Today on the LA Food Podcast, I'm your host Lucas Servodio, seriously considering throwing my hat in the ring for next year's Nathan's Hot Dog Eating Contest. Hear me out, I figure I would need to take down approximately 30 dogs in 10 minutes to do so. That's 3 dogs a minute and only 26 more than I had yesterday. I legitimately think I stand a chance, dear listener. Speaking of hot dogs, we're headed to Chicago today for part 2 of our The Bear Season 3 recap. Father Saul is with us to break down episodes 6 through 10. If you listened to part 1 on Monday, you'll know that we weren't too sweet on episodes 1 through 5. Did the second half of the season change our opinion? Not exactly, but keep listening to find out where exactly we feel the show got lost in the sauce, and most importantly, Father Saul's killer conspiracy theories about why. But first, a couple of things that caught my eye this week. There's an end finally to the service fee saga, a massive win for street vendors, and some really insightful reporting on just how hard it is to score a liquor license in LA. That's all coming up next, so without further ado, let's chow down. Dear listener, I made a deal with my wife. She let me start a food podcast and eat ungodly amounts of noodles, pizza, sandwiches, and more under 2 conditions. One is that I never utter her name. The other is that I find ways to be healthy outside of my work in food. Being the fantastic partner I am, I found a few ways to up my health game. I exercise almost every day, I try to sneak in salads for lunch whenever I can, and I only ever snack on healthy foods. The macadamia nut has become an essential part of my daily routine with the best omega-6 to 3 ratios in the nut game, 8 times better than pistachios and 20 times better than cashews. At houseofmacadamias.com, they've got a bunch of different macadamia products that you can enjoy, like savory and sweet snack packs and chocolate-covered snack bars. One of the problems with macadamias I've found is that they can be expensive, but I'm solving this for you, dear listener, because as of today, all you've got to do is head to houseofmacadamias.com and use code LAFOOD to get a 10% discount on a healthy snack that also happens to be delicious. So what are you waiting for? Head to www.houseofmacadamias.com/discount/LAFOOD and go nuts. Dear listener, happy day after the 4th of July. I hope you had a wonderful time eating hot dogs, hamburgers, whatever it may be. On today's episode, we will be doing part 2 of our Bear recap. If you tuned in for Monday's episode, I hope you enjoyed it. You'll know that we did episodes 1 through 5, and today we'll be doing episodes 6 through 10, as well as talking about some of our overall reactions to the season. Father Saul will be joining us for that. But first, a couple of things that caught my eye this week. First thing that you may have seen in your newsfeed is that service fees live to see another day. We talked about this a little bit last week. We mentioned that the junk fee ban was maybe not going to be extending to service fees because the California legislature had introduced some emergency legislation that would, in fact, exempt restaurants from having to comply with the junk fee ban. Well, the legislature got it done. Governor Newsom signed it on Saturday, less than 48 hours before the junk fee ban would have actually extended to restaurants and prevented them from actually charging service fees. This means that restaurants are allowed to continue charging those service fees, which range from like 4% to like 20%. And are meant to stabilize wages across front of house and back of house staff. They sometimes go to pay for things like health benefits, and I think are overall a good thing for the industry. I'm sure that there are a lot of restaurateurs out there who are very happy this week that they don't have to inflate their prices further to accommodate those costs, but rather can continue to charge those service fees. Of course, there are the caveats within the legislation that restaurants have to be super transparent about where those fees are going. The fact that those fees are included in the bill, they have to be really transparent about that on their menu and signage and postage within their restaurants. And also, they obviously have to continue to be good stewards of these fees. We can't get situations where those service fees are not going to the places that they're supposed to be going, which has happened with certain hospitality groups around town. Stephanie Brajo has a really good piece explaining the implications of this in the LA Times. I included it in this week's LA Food Stack, our Substack newsletter, which is linked in bio. It's a totally free newsletter, so be sure to go check that out and click the link to read Stephanie's piece. Really interesting in Stephanie's piece is she talks to somebody from CalPERG, which is a group that advocates for consumers. And they actually didn't like this legislation. They think that it basically allows restaurants to continue, quote unquote, ripping off customers. Classic example of an interest group that is literally just blindly pursuing their interests without looking at the bigger picture. I understand why Stephanie had to include their perspective in the piece. It makes for balanced reporting. But yeah, to all our friends at CalPERG, who I'm sure are avid listeners of this podcast, my recommendation is maybe go find some other things to advocate for. I think there's other ways that consumers are getting ripped off that are way worse than service fees. Of course, if you are someone who is very concerned about service fees, a reminder that there is a spreadsheet out there that actually logs all of Los Angeles' service fees. Father Saul and I made fun of this spreadsheet in the past, I think a little bit unfairly. It's kind of cool that it's out there and it exists. And I also linked to it in LA Food Stack this week. So if you want to find it, it's there. Another big win for those serving food in Los Angeles, street vendor permits this week became way more affordable. The city council introduced legislation that would lower the cost of street vendor permits from more than $500 annually to $27.51. There's a great LA Taco piece that dives deep into what this means for street vendors and why they actually did this. Basically, it comes down to the city administrative office, the office that studies legislation and then makes recommendations to the council. They found that the $500+ fee was an unrealistic amount to charge street vendors who basically don't make enough money to really justify paying those permits. A $27 fee, they found, is much more realistic and would probably encourage a lot more street vendors to actually secure the permit as opposed to continue operating illegally. Really good policy of just taking something that makes sense within the existing situation, right? When they had initially legalized street vending, they had expected thousands and thousands of people to purchase the $500 permits, and that didn't end up happening. LA Taco has the figure in their article, but I want to say that the city sells 900 of these permits a year, whereas there are literally tens of thousands of street vendors on the streets. This is likely going to make it so that street vendors are going to be more inclined to go legit, buy these permits, and that in turn will also likely generate even more revenue for the city because they're lowering the bar to entry. Good policy. We're all about it. If you want to learn more about street vending and sort of the winding road that street vendors have taken to legitimacy, I highly recommend going to listen to our interview with Rudy Espinoza of Inclusive Action for the City, which we recorded in March of 2023. But honestly, a lot of the discussions we have in that podcast are still extremely relevant. I highly recommend it. We'll also put that link in the LA Food Stack. Sticking with the theme of permits, Emily Wilson, a reporter whose byline you've probably seen in some of the food publications around town, she's got a great Substack called The Angel, in which she explores a lot of LA restaurant news. She published a great long form article on the really difficult process that exists right now for getting a liquor license in Los Angeles and essentially why it's so difficult and what can be done to change it. I found a lot of things in this article extremely, extremely interesting. First of all, I knew it was expensive to secure a liquor permit. I guess I didn't realize it could become literally hundreds of thousands of dollars depending on your situation. I also didn't realize how puritanical the reasoning for this is, that it really stems back to a time when California was sort of a lot more conservative. And also, I think the reason that the permits have stayed this way is because there are a lot of not in my backyard, NIMBY neighborhoods out there where when they see a restaurant that's going to pop up and serve liquor, they really activate to shut it down. And that's because they don't want people getting drunk in their neighborhood, pissing on their lawns, staying out till all wee hours of the morning. But the truth is, people aren't going to be doing that at neighborhood restaurants, right? They do that by going to liquor stores, buying a fifth of tequila for $20, as opposed to buying $20 cocktails at a restaurant. And that's a great point, actually, that Eddie Navarrete, friend of the pod, Fast Eddie of FE Consulting, he makes in this article. He spoke with Emily Wilson, and I just thought it was a great point, right? These are laws that should apply to liquor stores, not necessarily to restaurants, especially at a time when restaurants are suffering and they can use any sort of leg up in trying to generate more revenue, why don't we make the liquor permitting process easier for restaurants as opposed to the sort of like draconian, super labyrinthian process that exists right now? Highly, highly recommend going to read that piece to understand the ins and outs. And hey, now that the service fee ban is no longer something that the restaurant industry needs to advocate for, maybe we all start advocating for easier liquor laws. How about that? We've seen sometimes the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Sometimes what you advocate for actually makes a difference. Maybe we pivot, right? Right, industry? That's some political advice for free. Final thing I wanted to plug here before we get to our conversation with the legendary Father Saul. Wow, I'm being way too kind to Father Saul right now. Some not so great news. You may have seen that Gorilla Pies in the Valley had their trailer stolen. They lost equipment to the tune of $30,000. And as you know, dear listener, $30,000 makes a big, big difference to a restaurant. Chef Ben and the team over there are doing great work. They're great people. They make great product. And honestly, nobody deserves to go out of business because you've had some like ill-intentioned folks stealing your shit. He has launched a GoFundMe. I think they need something like $30,000. They're about 2/3 of the way there. If we have any deep-pocketed listeners, or no matter how much you want to give, it would be really, really appreciated, I'm sure, by Chef Ben and team and everybody who loves Gorilla Pies and their excellent wings. If you could go out there and donate whatever you can. I've also included that link in this week's LA Food Stack. As a reminder, I'm not going to be posting links to stories and show notes anymore, but I am posting a link to the LA Food Stack, which is our totally free weekly newsletter with all of the LA headlines and food headlines that you need to know about, dear listener. So go make sure to subscribe to that. There are also links to other articles I found interesting this week. For example, there's a New York Times article in which they talk to competitive eaters, the folks that are out there doing the hard work on the 4th of July, downing hot dogs at Coney Island. They talk to them about their lifestyle and their training regimens. I found it super interesting. There's also a look at the 100th anniversary of the Caesar salad, which is literally this week. And there's a big celebration happening in Tijuana. There's a great article on the debate around the origin story of the Caesar salad. Highly recommend going to read that. You can find that all at the LA Food Stack. That is literally just at the LACountdown.substack.com. You can also find it at the link in the show notes. That'll probably do for today. We'll be right back after the break with Father Saul to discuss The Bear. Dear listener, my wife recently decided to start eating meat after more than 15 years of being a vegetarian, and being the conscientious consumer that I am, I've been looking for ways to make our household's meat consumption as high quality and sustainable as possible. That's why I'm absolutely thrilled to have found First Light Farms, a small collective of passionate family farmers in New Zealand who are quietly changing the world. Not only are they producing the most tender, rich, and succulent Wagyu beef money can buy, but you can rest assured that First Light's cattle were raised as nature intended, living it up on lush pasture, eating a 100% grass diet with absolutely no grains, no animal byproducts, and no feedlots. The result is the best tasting meat in the game, full of natural marbling and packed with omega-3 fats. If you've ever enjoyed a meal at Matu in Beverly Hills, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. Matu famously sources all of its meat directly from First Light, and the good news is that you too can have First Light Farms meats delivered straight to your door. All you have to do is visit www.firstlight.farm, where you can buy their meats and also sign up for their members-only steak club. Members of the steak club enjoy tons of benefits, including monthly shipments of steaks, access to the highest marble score meats, and, this is my favorite part, access to First Light's full library of proprietary recipes and techniques. Also, you can cook the perfect steak within the comfort of your own home. Buying good steak isn't easy, and it isn't cheap. First Light delivers the highest quality at an incredible deal, and now that I've seen the light, I'm never going back. Visit www.firstlight.farm to learn more and use the code LAFood10 for a 10% discount on your first order. Welcoming back to the LA Food Podcast, the brand new president of the Zac Efron fan club, Father Saul. How you doing today?
Woo! I'm excited for this conversation. Excited to be a newly minted member of Team Zac. I can't believe I'm joining the bandwagon just as you seem to have dropped off. You were the pole bearer for the whole thing before.
I'm pretty sure I discovered Zac Efron in many ways. No, I mean, look, as someone who was both a thespian and an athlete in high school, he was very much the patron saint for us with divided allegiances. And then as his career progressed, I really thought he was hilarious in a lot of the movies he did, like Neighbors and Neighbors 2 critically. But recently, I just haven't been able to get over his, like, I mean, I don't want to say deformed face, but yeah, kind of deformed face.
He's an interesting character, man. Like, I think he has amazing comedic timing, but I thought he was like not much interesting beyond that. I think he must have gone through some like personal stuff and like worked through some personality like revelations, because he seems cool as hell, and A Family Affair on Netflix is a great time.
I could not disagree more, which actually sets us up for an interesting podcast if we start the disagreements at minute number 1. Did I ever tell you the time I met his brother, by the way?
Oh, I think you might have, because didn't we used to work with someone who like grew up in the same in the same town or went to high school with the Efrons or something like that?
Yeah, though that has absolutely nothing to do with it. I met Dylan, his brother, when I was running the Hollywood Half Marathon.
Oh, of course I remember this. Was this the same? Was this the famous marathon, the first big one where we had that morning interaction?
No, that was already like marathon number 3. By the way, I think I told that story to like a renowned chef recently, and they were like, cool. Did you meet your goal on the marathon? And it occurred to me that, like, despite your pep talk, I actually didn't meet my goal on that marathon. So
No, but that's the whole point. The point is nobody cares. It's okay.
yeah.
No one cares, buddy.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. But no, I met Dylan because we were like running side by side for pretty much the entire race, and at the end of it, we were like, "Yo, dude, what's your name?" We're basically racing each other this entire time, and we exchanged numbers. We also met up at the Chicago Marathon a few months later, but sad to say, him and I have not remained besties. Otherwise, he might be co-hosting this podcast with me.
well, luckily, you apparently weren't interesting enough to keep his attention. But I'm always here, buddy. And hey, who knows? At the rate they're going, maybe Zach's gonna make a fucking cameo on the Bears season 4.
Yes, seriously. Well, we're gonna get into that. Look, let's not beat around the bush. Let's get right to it. So, dear listener, in case you missed it, we dropped part 1 of our The Bear recap on Monday. We went through episodes 1 through 5, and needless to say, we weren't overly positive about it. We definitely detected a little bit of a dip in form. We're going to do the same thing today. We're just going to go episodes 6 through 10, and then we're going to offer some like bigger picture thoughts on this season so far. Any last words you want to say, Basal, before we dive into what is actually going to be another marathon?
No last words. I just hope this whole experience doesn't haunt you too much once we're through with it.
I was going to ask you, what's one word I never want to hear again in my life?
I know it, bud. Fucking haunt.
Yeah.
I think we get it, guys.
Yeah, it was haunting in all the wrong ways. Okay, look, episode 6 is where we're going to start off today. It's called Napkins, and it largely focuses on Tina, Liza Colon-Zayas' character. It's the only episode in season 3 that takes place in the past, entirely in the past, if I'm not mistaken. We find her working a corporate job, struggling to make ends meet, and she's stuck in sort of like a routine life when her employer of 15 years lays her off, and at the ripe age of 46, she's unable to find another job. Fate would have it, as she's waiting for the bus one day, she stumbles into the Beef and has a conversation with Michael, Carmi's late older brother, and basically she gets a job at the Bear, or at the Beef, I should say, which later becomes the Bear. So, from where I'm sitting, with my extremely low bar, after 5 episodes of this shit show season, this felt like somewhat of a return to form. Am I seeing this through season 3 goggles, or is there something to that?
No, I think there's something to that, but I might even tweak it. And I would say that this is an episode, a story that they had packaged and ready to tell, and that didn't get overstuffed for reasons that I think I want to get into when we get to conspiracies or context for why this season feels the way it does. I feel like the reason this episode kind of hits a little bit better is because it's a packaged story. It's all there. It harkens back to episodes like Fishes, right, where they do a little flashback episode, provide context on a character. I liked that. I don't know if you caught this, the title of the episode and the moment in which we meet Mike napkins, and Mike is refilling napkins when he stumbles into the conversation with Tina. In season 1, Tina had told a story to Carmy about when Michael was falling into his depression shortly before his suicide, that he had commented to her, he was like essentially not paying for napkins in the restaurant anymore. And she was like, Mike, we got to pay for napkins. And he was like, who cares? It's like, just gonna have to pay him again next month. Right. And in this episode, there's like a little, I don't know, little nod to that. I liked that. I liked the episode as a whole, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I really liked it, and I actually did not catch that. So thank you for being such a scholar and pointing our attention to that little detail. I will say the one thing that stood out to me with this episode, and that continued to stand out for the remainder of the season, is that there was like a marked decline in the quality of dialogue this season. For this episode specifically, it really stuck out to me when Mikey is talking to Tina about his field trip where he went to see basically an office building and he saw people having dreams over and over again. They're trying to have these really sort of like lofty, almost like abstract monologues that are really trying to hit you over the head with a theme and that just don't sound real. And that's like something that the show has been so good at for so long, is like conveying reality in the restaurant world and frankly in like human relationships and like family relationships. And something about all these like really like out there, monologues to really take me out of that. Have you noticed the same thing?
For sure, on the season as a whole, I actually have a specific example in mind in a future episode where I was like, "The fuck?" Emily was watching. She was like, "No one talks like this. Why would they be talking like this?" And I'll let you know what that was when we get there. Strangely, though, I rewatched this after seeing your note that particular anecdote didn't hit. It kind of did for me. That could be up to Jon Bernthal and Tina having, I think, a kind of good dynamic between them. Bernthal, I just could watch all day, talk about anything. So maybe it is actually not great. I wasn't mad at that. The sentiment he lands with, which is like, I'm never going to be able to pursue a dream, right? Like, it's not for me. I have too much, any other responsibilities, too many people to take care of, and I'm just never going to get there. That kind of hopelessness and limited ceiling. I don't know. I think that's a real sentiment that people can feel. And it hit for me. It hit for me. But I certainly take your point on the whole. And perhaps if there weren't so many other shitty monologues, this one would have been more okay. Because they're doing Michael holding court right now. We know he does that. Whatever. Yeah. But when you hear it fucking 8 times, 8 different versions of a shitty monologue, and you're like, I'm sick of this.
Yeah, maybe that's more it. It's like this one sticks out to me now because I've heard so many of them over the course of the season. Yeah, I agreed though. Jon Bernthal's performance was like, as always, a high point, and it's always nice to get to spend some time with him on screen. Also, interestingly, this episode was directed by Ayo Edebiri. Props,
man. Very cool. She also, I think, executive produced an episode. I think she actually EP'd Fishes, if I'm not mistaken. The one episode she didn't appear in at all in season 2. Love to see talented people taking on new roles.
Yeah, it's cool that they're sort of like spreading the love, like behind the scenes of director credit, writing credit, story by credits and whatnot. Kind of just conveys like that there's a real team behind this, that obviously this was like very much Chris Stohrer's baby, but like now definitely sort of that roster is expanding.
Yeah.
Moving on to episode 7. It's called Legacy. And yeah, it happened. Pivotal things that happen in this episode. We see Carmy back in therapy, in the group therapy, which we hadn't seen in a very long time. During this scene, the universe, aka the very on-the-nose therapist, tells him that he should probably apologize to Claire. Talk about another really poorly written line, in my opinion. We see the beef window operating and seemingly catching its stride, which was kind of cool to see, I thought. Mm-hmm. And there are loads of heady conversations about legacy between Carmy and Marcus. Critically, from a plot point, Sid meets Shapiro in this episode, who asks her if she wants to be the CDC at his new restaurant. And yeah, at the end of the episode, Sugar's water breaks. So this episode came in hard with the quote-unquote haunting. Why are they doing this to us?
I mean, I don't know why they're doing it to us like this. It's like the 4th time we've heard the two facts talk about haunts and what random shit in their life could be a haunt. This I think a bit, or if this episode had been better structured, I think the idea would have been clearer. I think the point of this episode is to kind of zone in on on where Carmi's head is at, right? And kind of the trap of his trauma. It's interesting that when I first watched the Al-Anon scene when he's in the group therapy, I also heard it as like, okay, we're getting explained to that Carmi needs to apologize to Claire. But I actually, on rewatch, think there was a maybe second idea there too, which is around his mom, Donna. Because Al-Anon is for people whose family members are alcoholic or addicts, right? And it's this idea, I think the opening conversation is a woman talking about how, their family member got sober and apologized to them. But it feels like unfair to forgive them given all the stuff they'd gone through as part of the process. Certainly, I think that's something that weighs on Carmi as well as it relates to his mother. But yeah, no, it's so that's one of the ways he's haunted. And I don't know, man.
Well, one of the things that I don't understand is Donna, obviously she's had alcoholism problems. Is she reformed?
As I understand it, she's sober. I think the idea is that either after she drove the car into the house in Fishes or after Michael's suicide, unclear when. Yes, I think she's gotten sober, and it's like trying to do the work a little bit, right? Well, quickly on the legacy piece, because I think it's important and ties in here as well. Something I thought was interesting in that, speaking of bad dialogue, the whole legacy conversation between the three I found very awkward to watch and like confused about what the point was. What I think is interesting is that when Carmi is describing what he wants to leave behind, he says something like panicless and anxiety free, which required him to be square with everybody, was the quote. He's like, I want to create that space. So that's interesting only because it's so far from Carmi's current reality, and it makes you think about the people he has to get square with, including his mother, including Claire, including Sydney in some ways. It was confusing. The theme and message was confusing. There was a bunch of random shit happening. This episode also opens with the FAC interaction where they have that random guy. Do you remember this? Like, there's this guy who comes up to the FAC.
The uncle.
Yeah. And he tells a story about the third rail and like holding on. Yeah. And I watched it and I was like, what is the point of this entire scene? Like,
again, first of all, way too much facts. We do not need this much facts. Second of all, another example of people don't talk like this. Yeah. The way he was talking about like the third rail, it was just like, it was like a bad theater kid, just like doing something on stage. So yeah, that really took me out of it. I will say though, the whole point of legacy, like as an idea, just from a restaurant perspective, I found interesting because it was like he was talking about basically like, I forget which one of his former mentors basically said that when they think about legacy as at a restaurant, they think about it in terms of like not just the restaurant itself, but also sort of all of the other restaurants that go on to sort of start from that one restaurant. So like, for example, like, let's take a Los Angeles example, right? You've got Ori Menashe of Bavel and Bestia and Safi's, and cooks that have worked for him, aka Diego Argotti, has gone on to start Poltergeist. Lord Maynard Yera has gone on to start Kuya Lord, which just won the James Beard Award, right? You're sort of giving birth to like all these other ideas with just this one idea. I thought that was really interesting from like a just theory perspective. But I think it also kind of like brings up a tension that we're probably going to talk about more later, which is the show is trying to do a lot thematically in terms of being like the standard bearer for the industry and getting these like industry ideas out there while also having to tell a story about human beings. And this did nothing for the story about human beings.
Well, I agree with you. I agree that they're trying to do too much and particularly overstretched, I think, in exactly what you're describing in terms of like The Bear is not just a story about these characters. It's also a story about the restaurant world, right? And all that. And we'll certainly get into that more. The one way I do think it's a relevant idea, and maybe I'm giving too much credit, is to the example you just gave about Bestia and Safi's and Bavel. All that legacy is about people. Right? Yeah. It's about the people at the restaurant. It wasn't legacy about food, although they may have touched on that too, but it was really like, it's about what the people you work with then go and do. It's an idea we hear echoed by Olivia Colman in the finale. I think that could be the relevant seed here maybe, but it's like really, you got to kind of dig for it.
Yeah, well, and I think it's also supposed to show us like the ways that Carmi is failing, right? I think we're supposed to in this episode, I think we're supposed to see the walls are beginning to close in on him, right? And one way is he's kind of identifying what success looks like for him, like on a theoretical level. But as he's identifying it, we're kind of like left as the audience to be like, okay, you're actually really far from that, bud. You're
Yeah.
not succeeding. This is maybe why the restaurant is failing.
Yeah. And then I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's this episode where they have that really terrible service. Is that this one, or is that episode 9?
No, I don't think
It,
it's this one.
it,
I think it's 9. 9 is where
yeah.
the
Okay.
wheels really start to come off.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, we see that idea then reflected later on. I will say there were a bunch of actual character moments that I kind of did like in this. So when Teddy Fack and Gary have that little conversation about Gary's baseball experience, there was yeah. And if that was, again, if there had been fewer other Fack moments, and if the whole story had been more structured and clear, that was a really lovely moment. It was the perfect amount of getting to know Gary, right? There's these little interactions. I think Richie and Sugar have a moment, right? Ibrahim is having a good time. Someone, ironically, the one part of the restaurant, which is the beef, is having a good time. And I liked all those things. Just the way they were put together. My head was all over the place. And what you said in our last episode was you don't even remember these as episodes.
Yeah.
If you told me asked me what happened in Legacy, unless I had just watched it, it'd be really hard to tell you.
Yeah. Wait, is this the episode that starts with the magic thing, or is it one of the future episodes?
That is a future episode, because in this episode, Carmy explains to Marcus the ledger domain, the sleight of hand idea, and then they follow up with the magic montage for fucking 5 minutes also.
Yeah, we'll get to that, I guess. I do have to say this episode sort of reinforced a theory we've been having in terms of one of the reasons that this season has been suffering, and that is cameos. But I think that this added another layer to it. And it's not just that they're doing celebrity cameos, right? Because we saw obviously John Cena being forced in there in a pretty horrific way. I think they're also leaning too heavily into friends of the show.
Yeah.
I was watching this show and I was absolutely gobsmacked when I recognized this guy on screen, who is somebody I follow on Instagram, kind of hate follow. He's the husband of an influencer that lives in Pasadena. And I don't know if you remember, but they were all gathered around outside the beef window talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And there's this random guy smoking a cigar, right? Eating chips and stuff, dressed in a black suit.
Yeah.
That is the husband of an influencer, and they're all friends with this crew, Maddie Matheson, and I'm pretty sure the Stores and whatnot. He served absolutely no purpose in this episode. His name was in the credits as co-guest star. And on top of that, other people in this episode were Paulie James, I think his name is, the owner of Uncle Paulie's Deli here in Los Angeles, another sort of part of the friend group and whatnot. It just feels like sometimes we're watching somebody's inside joke, not even joke, but we're kind of out on the outside of something that is happening for them. It just kind of reinforces to me this show doesn't feel like it's for us anymore or for viewers anymore. It almost feels okay, you kind of now have carte blanche to do whatever you want. Go do it.
Yeah, I mean, a great example, because I had fucking forgotten about that interaction. And I remember when I was watching it for the first time, when they were outside the old beef window and they were having the interaction, and I the guy stood out. I was like, who's this guy? I don't understand why we're listening to him talk so much. And the scene ends, and I was like, what was the point?
Why there's so many close-ups of him eating chips?
Yeah.
Why are we why? Yeah.
I was like, I don't understand what I was supposed to take from any of that. I didn't care. I don't remember a single thing they said.
Yeah. And I mean, another example of this, and this is kind of one that even pains me to say, how much I love How Long Gone and the How Long Gone guys. But, both of their headshots were included in that thing that the Facts made to put on the wall and say, these are the restaurant critics in town and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
That never really came back at all in any meaningful way, And it was just I feel like they just did that so they can include headshots of friends on the wall and give Maddie Matheson a few more lines. And it's just stuff like that drives me crazy.
Well, it's funny. You're 100% right. I mean, it was just in some ways it could just be an Easter egg, but you are 100% correct. Here, I think this is a good time to mention something that we'll come back to when we do a full overview. I was listening to a podcast called The Watch. Sorry for giving out free ads. And Andy Greenwald, as they were talking about the first 5 episodes themselves and talking about the same ideas we're talking about, how overstuffed it feels and kind of distracted almost, Andy mentioned that in multiple conversations he'd had with Chris Storer, Chris had said he had a 3-season story. He had a 3-season arc. And FX asked him to push to a 4th season because of the success of the show. kind of actually I think Ted Lasso did something similar where they asked for like additional episodes in the Ted Lasso seasons because they just wanted to stretch out a piece of content that they knew people would spend time on. And so I think what happened, and if you look at the season through the lens of he had 10 episodes and then was told to make 20 and then basically just called up his friends and worked with Maddie Madison to fill the fucking time.
Yeah.
It kind of actually makes sense that you're just like, they're like, well, I don't want to, they don't want to tell the whole story that they have, all the arcs in season 3, because they don't have, I think, anything beyond that.
Yeah.
And instead, they just kind of like spread everything out. And I'm saying all this to say, maybe we will see the How Long Gone guys pop back in season 4. I think there's a ton of stuff essentially that got like half baked set up in this season so that it would pay off in season 4 and then filled with a bunch of crap basically to fill time.
So you're telling me this feeling I'm having of this season could have been an email is very much justified?
I think it's 100% accurate. I think we could ourselves take like an editor cut to the season and make a good season out of the scenes that we have that matter, and we just take out some of the crap. And if you replace the crap with meaningful payoff and like more propulsive character arcs where the things we're seeing and being told are more concise and matter, it's a good season. It's just that I think they got kind of screwed over by the whatever studio.
Here's why I have a problem with that even more now. Because if you are telling me you now have more real estate to work with as a show, and you maybe only story-wise have 3 seasons to work with, give us shit that matters. Meaning like, or that's interesting to watch. Like, for example, like maybe take us in the underbelly of the Chicago restaurant scene more in some way, in some meaningful way. Like kind of take the computer part of the episode that we liked so much, episode 5, and ramp that up. Give us more of like an operations view, or maybe like a permit view or something. Like let us see how the sausage gets made a little bit or something. And maybe that's just because we are too invested in the restaurant industry is why I feel like that. But honestly, I don't even think we could make one season out of all the shots. I think we could make one episode out of all the shots, like one meaningful episode.
I wouldn't go. I actually jotted down in my notes. Like, I think you can make 6 to 7. I think you can make 6 episodes. And think about it. Like, you have a whole Tina episode. And the reason why I said that it seemed like that seemed like an episode that was always going to be a episode that they used. Right.
Yeah.
And by the way, every other time they've had a character feature episode, like they did with Tina, that episode and what we've learned about the character has paid off. Forks with Richie pays off. We see how he grows. Fishes with Carmy pays off. He's taking back cannolis, right? And you get that additional context about him. We barely see fucking Tina again, like the rest of the season. And so, I mean, it's still a great episode, but then it's like, why are we filling time? I think you're exactly right that the decisions they made for how do I think kind of stretch this out were the wrong ones. You could have even, to your very point, I don't care if we just have an entirely indulgent episode for me, like that doesn't move plot, but where we just spend a ton of time in Chicago and it's like Carmy going around. And I don't care if we do that. Spend some time. If you have to fill time, do it with something that is interesting and meaningful and consistent, and not like, well, shit, I got Maddie Madison over here. Might as well do some bits and fill the time.
I know.
Oh, and the other thing they did was just like cut through all these flashbacks. Remember the flashback episode with Carmy? Just constant reuse of that. And I think it was just filling time.
And the flashbacks just come back again and again. And it's the same shots of him working at fucking Noma with the little flowers and shit. Like we see that a million times. It's literally just fucking fluff.
Yeah. And I have no idea what to make of it. I'm like, why are we looking at this now in the context of we're in the middle of service, but he's thinking about this stuff, but he's acting a different way from how he is feeling in the I mean, I'm like turned around.
Yeah.
And they got a little screwed over.
Not to get your blood boiling even more, but we should probably move on to episode 8, all right? Episode 8 is called Ice Chips, and Natalie gives birth. That's it. Like literally, that is the episode. The most interesting thing I should say is that Jamie Lee Curtis is in the episode again as Donna. We open on Natalie trying to get to the hospital in her Porsche, by the way. She drives a Porsche.
Right. I noticed that too. And I was like, okay. Didn't realize we're making that kind of money.
I guess Pete is making pretty good money.
There we go.
Nobody answers, and therefore she is forced to basically call her mom. And her mom shows up, and the episode is really just sort of them reconnecting and sort of like having a chance to squash old beefs or understand each other a little bit more. And that's sort of the journey that we're brought on as Natalie goes into labor. So you said you found yourself fast forwarding through this one. How come?
I understand it's an important moment of reconnection between Sugar and Donna, right? And for the record, I want to say I'm glad that Sugar, as a character, and her act and the actor who plays her, who I think does a lot of dirty work on the show, she's like
Abby
holding it
Elliott.
together. Abby Elliott, yeah. Glad she got her moment. Just like I'm glad that Liza Colin Zayas, I think her name is, and Tina, who fucking crushes. Cool, they got their moments. Damn, you talk about dialogue, dude. You talk about shitty dialogue.
Yeah.
I couldn't stand it.
Can I guess the moment that Emily was like, people don't talk like this?
Well, it actually wasn't in this episode, but please go ahead. No, yeah.
I was going to guess that the moment is when Donna is talking about her dream.
Oh, yeah.
At various points in the episode, Donna finds herself recounting the birth of each of her children. This was like a bad play in a lot of ways, honestly.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it was like where you just have like one place. It's perfect for a play actually because it all takes place basically. It could all take place in like the labor room, right? In the hospital. I think that's what they're called in the hospital.
Delivery room.
Delivery room. Labor room. That's something different and highly illegal. Anyways, but yeah, and when she's recounting the birth of Natalie of Sugar, she tells this like dream sequence, and that was hard to watch. That was hard to listen to.
It was just like corny. It was overwrought. The reason why I was fast forwarding is because like 15 minutes in, 20 minutes in, I was like, okay, I get it. Skim forward. I also, Jamie Lee Curtis is a great actress, as you know, but I don't really know what to make of Donna.
Yeah.
Last time, like we saw her in an alcoholic, rage. We saw her in this kind of broken emotional moment with Pete, where she's talking about how she doesn't know how to apologize. And then she comes in, and I get like, maybe excitement of being a part of this experience. But I just got I got annoyed by her. And ironically, I think Jamie Lee Curtis and Abby Elliott don't actually have great chemistry. The moment that made me feel the most connected and believe in the characters is when Pete showed up for 10 seconds and had the interaction with Donna. And I was like, that's kind of real. Like Pete and Donna are vibing on an entirely different level. And I'm like, this feels like it has pathos. This feels like two people who like have a interaction and a history that we've seen, and it feels meaningful. And I was kind of cracking up that it was like that interaction that I was like, okay, I believe that. And of course, you have to get another fucking fact scene for no fucking reason at the end. Why are they there?
Why are they there? No, honestly, we need more Pete scenes. More Pete scenes, less fact. I'm a big fan of Pete, honestly. That said, I actually really like anytime that Jamie Lee Curtis is in the Donna character. I think she does it really well. I don't know. I just really believe the character when she's doing it. The one thing, and maybe this is more of like a toxic trait on my behalf, when she first showed up to Natalie, I was like, she's not that annoying. Chill the fuck out. She's fine. She's trying to help you. Like, stop screaming at her. You're making this worse by screaming at her, you know?
I had the other side. I was like, why is she like, she's been through birth 3 times. Does she think running up to a woman in labor and yelling at them about like how to breathe is like the vibe? I mean, I don't know. I was team Natalie on the chill the fuck out Donna in the parking lot.
I was just like, she's done it 3 times. Of course she wants to impart her wisdom, you know? Fucking listen. This is your first child, you know? I don't know. To me, I was like, maybe I'm just used to toxic family members. Who knows? Moving on to episode 9, which is the penultimate episode of the season, thank God, and it's called Apologies. Now, I'd sum this episode up as trying to tie up loose ends, and also teeing up easy dominoes for the finale to deliver on. We see Carmy kind of unraveling while running Expo at the restaurant and really seeing some horrible services. We're not having a good time. He's yelling people about like Wagyu not being cooked right and stuff like that. We see Richie kind of beginning to lose inspiration in sort of like his service, and he's missing marks as a result. For example, we see him forget someone's birthday, and if you've seen the season so far, you know that they fucking love birthdays at the Bear. Sid seems to have decided that she is going to jump ship because she's basically practicing how she's going to tell Carmy that she is going to leave for another opportunity. Spoiler alert, she ultimately fails in gathering the courage to tell Carmy. But most critically, towards the end of the episode, we learn that Cicero is bleeding money and pretty much is going to have to close the restaurant. He doesn't actually have the balls to tell Carmy this. What he tells Carmy is, hey, we really need this review to be a good one because my money isn't going to last forever. But when he goes back to the car after that interaction and we see him have a conversation with computer, we learn that it's actually much worse and that he's pretty much out of money already, right?
Hmm.
This is the one with the weird montage at the start, right? The magic montage.
Yeah, this is the magic montage. Yep, yep.
Okay. So 2 episodes ago, we hear this like small conversation about sleight of hand, and the first 5 minutes are like a YouTube documentary of magic. This felt
Hmm.
completely gratuitous, and for the life of me, I don't even know why this happened. There's nothing that is there anything that happens like that justifies this?
No, and look, it might have been more okay. I mean, 5 minutes is too long to talk about fucking magic. Like you're like looking, I was like looking up from my phone because I was looking at my phone because I was so bored. I'm like, are they still doing the magic thing? What the fuck's going on?
And you fucking love magic.
And I fucking love magic. I was like, can't wait to see the magic. No, what should have happened, and again goes to the idea of them having to stretch. This is clearly something they're teeing up for Marcus to deliver on. And if they're gonna spend 5 minutes on magic this episode, I feel like either this episode or the finale, you gotta see it happen. No, instead we have a 5 minute YouTube video about magic for no reason in the course of a season.
No reason. This was literally like we have real estate to fill. Let's fill it. Also, like these
Yeah.
episodes are not short anymore. Like they did. Have they always been 44 minutes?
No, some of them. Well, some of them. I think it varies between like 28, 30, and then I think Fishes was like 44 or whatever. They
Yeah.
don't all. I mean, you're right though. They were longer on a episode to episode basis for no reason. Like, there's so much you could cut.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's a bit of an aside with the magic thing, but we'd be remiss if we didn't mention it after talking about it earlier. Okay, one thing that the show's clearly trying to convey is that Carmi, by trying to process the trauma he's been through via food, is repeating the cycles in his own life and specifically his kitchen. Like literally the way that he's talking to people about the Wagyu or like while he's running the Expo line, very reminiscent of the way that Joel McHale spoke to him.
Mm-hmm.
That said, it didn't necessarily really land for me that that's what was happening while I was watching it. It only really landed for me later on when I was reading reviews and people were like explaining to me what happened. Is that just because I was checked out or was there something that went amiss?
I mean, it could have been because that you were checked out because this is an idea that's been hammered on so much. I mean, like again, I think we kind of get it at this point. If it's a tighter season, fewer episodes, whatever, shorter, I think this idea has been told, and we don't need to get told again about it. I do want to say one thing that I kind of like as an idea is in episode 1, you see Joel McHale instruct Carmi to subtract. That's how you make things good, subtract. And something Carmi's doing throughout the season is just subtracting everything that was like nurturing or would give him joy, from fucking cigarettes to Sydney to Claire, right? And I think you see that too. And he's subtract like everything he's doing is just about like the fine dining soulless food that he wants to put out, and he's doing nothing to connect with the people who are doing it with him. I'm saying all this, and as I'm doing it, I'm like basically just trying to give credit. I'm like, oh, here's an idea that you could like kind of pull together, but in reality, it's so confused.
The thing I liked about this episode was a much smaller theme that happened. It's kind of big in Sid's story arc, I'll say, but basically during this episode, at some point, we see Sid reflecting on how all of the coverage that has been written up about the bear so far
Yeah.
really centers around Carmi. Like Carmi's photo is everywhere. He's clearly being lauded as sort of like the chef and sort of like the engine behind all of this when, when they set out to do this, it was very much like, we're going to do this together. This is a partnership and whatnot. And I think that that's a really legit thing that happens in the industry and that people don't talk about enough. I was literally at a restaurant last week, Union in Pasadena, fantastic restaurant, one of the best pasta meals I've had in a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
I was at the bar, I was eating alone. Actually, shout out to Brad from where were you from, Brad? I think you were from Minnesota, but he helped me take down a bunch of pasta dishes because like I ordered 3 pasta dishes to myself and couldn't finish them. And I promised I would give him a shout out on the pod last week and I didn't. So fat chances he's listening this week. But in case you are, hi, Brad. Thank you. But what happened while I was talking to the server at this restaurant was that I was like, yeah, this is, you guys are really sort of like a little bit underrated when it comes to pasta. Chef Christopher has been doing such great work. And they're like, actually it's not Chef Christopher. He's, who's back there. It's Chef Sandro Hernandez. And she was like, Chef Sandro. And like in all the
Mm,
write-ups that happen, even to this day, Chef Christopher is the one mentioned. Chef Sandro is not. I think this is a really legit thing that happens in the industry. And it's also something that some restaurants are trying to solve for. Like, for example, at Poltergeist, if you look at the bottom of their menu, they list everybody in the kitchen's name. It's really cool. It's like a cast of characters. Like
yeah.
Diego's very adamant, like, this is not just about me. And he says that in most interviews too, you know? So I think that that was an interesting theme that they teased out here.
Hmm.
And I did think that it was relevant to the plot too, because obviously like Sid is like trying to consider whether she wants to continue with the bear or go do her own thing. So, I've shat a lot on this season, but I think that that's a good example of how you can both make some commentary about the industry while connecting it to the story.
Yeah, I mean, it reinforces the idea that she's not a partner. Of course, they then like hammer it home even more next episode when someone literally tells a story about how their chef gave them credit, and you have to be like, okay, I get it, yeah. But no, I don't disagree.
What did you think of the fax intervention with Claire at the hospital?
I look. I will say this: if this had been one of the 4 or 3 fact scenes we got, that's fine because it's already been established that the facts are a conduit between Carmy and Claire because Fact gave Claire Carmy's number. Like I get it. There's a relationship there. If this was one of the few times we'd seen the facts playing a little bit of a role, it would have been sweet. Instead, I was like, all right, here we go again.
Yeah, I agree with that. The one thing I like can't buy is like they make Neil Fack so stupid. Like literally when he's talking to Claire, like I swear he's getting stupider every episode. Like every episode he gets more of an ingenue. He gets more of this deer in the headlight looks, and he says things that are more and more sort of like childlike. And it's just like they're ramping up this caricature, probably just a factor of the fact that you mentioned that we've gotten way too much of them this season.
Yeah.
If this was just one of 4 times, then maybe I could have bought it. Not to mention, doesn't lead to anything. Like they intervene, doesn't tie up in the season finale.
Nope.
But they're setting this up for season 4, you think?
Of course they are. They're treading water. We have known all season long what the key ideas and tensions are between the characters, right? And I think in a typical Bear season that's propulsive and frenetic, you'd be getting the moments, the payoff moments from Richie and Carmy's schism, from Carmy and Sid, from Carmy and Claire. And what instead they have to do is, after setting up all these various tensions and understanding how Carmy thinks about them over and over again, by episode like 5 we get it, they have to just tread water because I think they had nothing else for like that. Season 4 is the last season. They want to pay off with the final portion of the show, and we got nothing else going on, so we just have to keep doing it.
Keep doing it till we get there, and hopefully we get there someday. Okay, last.
Don't clip that quote.
Or I'm doing it now. Okay, episode 10. It's the finale, and it's called Forever, which is also how long I felt this season took. It took place almost entirely at the funeral for Olivia Colman's restaurant Ever. It's an episode full of chef guest cameos. There's Grant. Is it Grant Achatz?
Grant Achatz.
Achatz? I always fuck up his name. Of Alinea. There's Kevin Bohm of Boca, Milk Bar's Christina Tosi, Elska's Anna Posey, Sanchez Copenhagen's Rocio Sanchez, Wiley Dufresne, Will Godara of 11 Madison Park, like literally on and on and on. And not to mention at the start of the episode, Thomas Keller in a flashback, of course, with Carmy. We also get cameos from other people who appear in the show. There's Luca, played by Will Poulter, the best name in the entire show, of course. And Joel McHale's character is there too, which was an interesting choice, and we'll talk about it in just a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Things that happen in this episode. Well, Sydney is confronted by Shapiro about the CDC role, and we kind of see that she's still on the fence, which is only underscored at the end when we kind of see her have a moment of realization of how much good the bear has wrought in some ways.
Huh.
I'll tell you, I can tell you why I think that in just a moment, but she ends up having a panic attack, and I think it's about her decision.
Yeah.
And then sort of like other things that happen are, Carmy confronts Joel McHale for the abuse. And right at the end, the Tribune review drops. And based on what we see, we're not 100% sure, but we're led to think it's not an excellent review.
Mixed review, for sure. Yeah.
Mixed review. We're led to think that. Okay, first question for you. Saul, why is Thomas Keller the best actor on the show?
He's not. Although I was pretty impressed. Actually, really all the chefs, as they were doing it, I was like, I know these have to be scripted lines, or at least scripted. You don't think so?
That's my theory as to why it was so fucking good. Like, I literally think so Thomas Keller actually shared something on Instagram today. He was saying that 11 years ago, Chris Storer, actually, when he was a documentary filmmaker, went up to the French Laundry to shoot like a little documentary about the French Laundry for like the service industry or something. To me, I think they literally were just like, hey, Thomas, can you tell that story that you told us that one time about XYZ?
Sure.
And they just let Thomas tell it, right? And that was really good because so many other times it contrasts with like another moment in this episode where Will Poulter's character is talking to Grant Aschitz about how he does certain things. And yeah, it's a bit of a bit. It's funny. You can tell that the chef doesn't really want to be talking to Will Poulter about this. But they have him act, right? They have the chef act, and you can tell that the chef is acting, right? It's like a bit. I like the idea of giving the people in the industry that you're bringing in, have them offer like real moments, almost like a When Harry Met Sally. The actual couples who had been together for like 60 years or whatever, talking about love and their partnership. I liked the idea of having like real stories from the people in the industry, even like Christina Tosi stories that like they came across as real.
The thing is this, they were real, but they also served direct thematic stuff for the show. So maybe they were like, hey, do you have a story about X, about getting credit from a chef? Do you have a story about being in a toxic environment and what that was like and Tosi tells that story, right? So I think there's something that's good directing. I will say that's like, I was, the fact that I was even questioning, I'm like, damn, is like Thomas Keller or Christina Tosi like the best like naturally talented actor? And I think it's more of a product of Storer's direction. But the Keller the Keller scene, and actually, frankly, a lot of the chef scenes just did seem, again, like that indulgence, that filling time. It was cool. It's cool to see them, but it still it confused me in this way. In this episode, we get the three payoffs that we kind of ultimately, the only three payoffs we're going to get this season. The review hits. That's kind of a half payoff because we don't know fully, but we know it hits.
It's a blue ball payoff if I've ever heard one.
Blue ball payoff. We get the David Field, a.k.a. Joel McHale interaction, which I think is actually sort of supposed to be the most cathartic payoff. And then we have Carmy and Olivia Colman have a conversation. I think that's sort of a payoff too. He's kind of reconnecting with these various influences in his life. My confusion with the Thomas Keller thing was this. It was a cool scene. From what I gather, Carmy has had amazing, nurturing, thoughtful mentors who've really showed him how to create a good kitchen environment, except for one. And for some reason, maybe his personal family trauma, whatever, I'm happy to hear the explanations. As we're watching the Thomas Keller scene, and we're watching the interaction with Olivia Colman, who was a mentor and sent Carmy to Noma, why is it some influences and not others? It's not like he hasn't been shown how to do this correctly. In fact, he's been shown more how to do it correctly. So I don't know. It was cool scene with Keller, but yeah.
No, well, that's a good point. And do we have any sense of like timeline, like which job came first? I mean, obviously Ever with Olivia Colman came before Noma, right? Mm-hmm. But did Joel McHale maybe just come at the end and it just like fucked him up irrevocably?
That would be the explanation. And I also think, trying to parse together the flashbacks, he might have spent the most time with McHale. Mm-hmm. I'm not 100% sure, but he was last. And it's also, of course, where he learns of of Michael's death. So sure, I can get it. But at the same time, I was like, I don't know. You seem to have like plenty of good role models here.
Well, look, let's dig into that quote unquote payoff. Okay, so how this comes together is basically like you see that they all sit down for dinner, and as they sit down for dinner, Carmy clocks Joel McHale from across the room, and they make like eye contact. Carmy even tells Sid and Luca like, that guy's a real piece of shit. Mm-hmm. As he sees Joel McHale stand up to go to the bathroom, you kind of see Carmy get up and go after him. Mm-hmm. And they have this confrontation.
Anticlimactic and a bit corny and a bit obvious in its messaging. I got excited. When I saw that they brought in Joel McHale, I was like, oh shit, something's gonna go down. And this guy's in Carmi's head. What's this interaction gonna be? And it was the most anticipatable message. It was still cool, by the way. Joel McHale crushing it as a douchebag and an asshole.
Yeah.
Also, a really interesting quick aside: Carmi kind of worships David Field. Gets more done at 10 a.m. than most people get done in their lives, right? By 10 a.m. The best chef in the world. And Luca in the show goes, used to be the best chef in the world. I just thought that was an interesting detail that of who Carmi worships. And yeah, I can come up with I can see trauma from mom connecting to trauma and how he was treated and the way he responded from his mother, then tying to this guy. I don't know. The actual interaction essentially boils down to Carmi saying you fucked me up. Fuck you. You gave me ulcers. You got anxiety attacks. I can't be a human. You broke me. And Joel McHale is like, you're fucking welcome, because the whole point is that to become excellent, you have to put everything else away. And you were an okay chef when you came to me, and you left an excellent chef. It's basically the other side, the other philosophical side versus an Olivia Colman, I would say, or a Thomas Keller, where he's like, no, it's not about nurturing. It's not about, connecting. It's about subtracting everything to be great. And that's how you become great. And they leave the interaction basically there. And okay, Joel McHale did a great job. I felt kind of empty. I felt kind of empty after the interaction. It's been built up the whole show.
Yeah. It almost didn't feel real to me. It didn't feel real to me that these two people were actually meeting after we've seen it built up so much over the course of 3 seasons. And I guess there is some reality to the fact that maybe you've built an interaction up, or you've thought about it so much that you're like, if it ever happens, I'm going to do this. Or if it ever happens, I'm going to do, I'm going to say this or act like this. And then it ends up coming to you, and you can't interact the way you thought you could, because it ends up being not even fulfilling for you, because you weren't even able to say the things you wanted to. Maybe you didn't get the reaction you wanted or whatever, and it leaves you a little bit cold. And maybe that's how we were supposed to feel, because that's certainly how I walked away with it. It was predictable, the message, but then it was counterbalanced by the conversation he has with Olivia Colman at the end, where she's talking about the nourishment and the people that you work with and whatnot. Where I'm unclear is where Carmi stands with all of it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, which of those two messages did he take on board? And maybe we're supposed to be left with that question.
No, I think it is. It's the two worlds he's being pulled between, the two philosophies he's being pulled between. I think in the maybe initial idea for the arc of the show, this might have been episode 5 of the season, right? Or episode 6, right?
Yeah.
I think that this actually is sort of the moment. These two ideas of how you execute a restaurant and how you treat yourself and the people around you, reinforced then by the mixed review, which indicates essentially that Carmi's approach so far, which is much more in the David Field range, at least this season, doesn't work for him or for his restaurant, right? There's an idea there that works. It's just that, again, for everything that we had to slog our way through to get here, and for where it leaves us, it just didn't feel satisfactory.
Certainly tracks with my prediction, because I'd predicted that the review was going to drop episode 6 or 7 as sort of the midpoint of the season.
Right.
And so if you're saying it should have dropped maybe episode 5 of a regular season, then it would have come as the midpoint.
Yeah, no, I think that's why I reacted the way I did, and thanks for bringing it up, because when you were like, I believe it'll drop episode 6 and 7, I was like, that's a very reasonable prediction to make for a good season arc. And what I was alluding to is the fact that I think it dropping at the very end, not quite the same payoff.
Yeah.
Can I give you my conspiracy theory, though?
Dude, I've been dying to know your conspiracy theory.
Have you seen Inglourious Basterds?
Yeah, a really long time ago, but yeah.
So at the end of Inglourious Basterds, the last line that Brad Pitt says directly to camera, as written by Quentin Tarantino, is, I think this might be my masterpiece. And it's essentially Tarantino saying to the audience and giving his own opinion on the quality of the show. I don't think this conspiracy is correct, but in a way, when we cut to the review and it's brilliant, confusing, perplexing, the mixed words, I was like, I wonder if Chris Storer knew. It kind of works as an episode drop where he's almost commenting on the quality of the own season he made. Again, if we are to believe it's if that self-awareness is there for him, and I feel like it must be. I feel like it must be I bet they could have, even with the seasons 3 and 4 expanding the show, they still could have done a tighter version of the season where this review dropped in episode 7 and we get some more payoffs and character arcs as it goes. It almost feels like intentional that he was like, maybe do 20 fucking episodes, fine, and you get a mixed fucking review season, and I know it, and I'm gonna leave you with that idea. Again, that's a little conspiracy theory for Saul that I don't think is correct, / maybe gives him too much credit.
No, that's a Kyle turn the camera moment on, and I think that there's something to that. You know, we talked about this in the last review that we did, but they know how to make a good TV show. They're not making a shitty TV show on purpose.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying this is a shitty TV show, even season 3 as it is, right? Like, I think, you know, one thing that I really want to make clear is the reason that I'm so like down on it and passionate about it and whatnot is because I really like the show.
Yeah.
Right. It's because I really like the characters. I really like appreciate the work that's happened. I really still appreciate all the food work that goes into the show. Like the food shots are still incredible. The whole like unveiling sort of the behind the scenes of the restaurant operations is still my favorite part of the show. But yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like, I want it to be as good as it can be.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like it sounds like there are various factors at play as to why that's not happening. So I think that that's a brilliant conspiracy theory. It's way better than the one that you shared me about how like there's no actual pandas and that they're just humans in panda suits.
Wait, is that a thing I said? How drunk was I when I said that? Are you sure that was me?
I just made
You
that up right now.
Okay.
I made that up right now, but the fact that you believed it could be you
Yeah, exactly
is enough for me.
rough look for me. Yeah, man. Yeah, I mean, we've been going in. I feel like I've been monologuing a lot. Speaking of, indulgent monologues from the bear, I feel like I'm echoing it in this podcast. But I got a lot of feelings, same as you, man. Like,
Yeah.
I was disappointed. I know it could be better, and trying to figure out the reasons why it wasn't and how it maybe could be next time around.
We've actually, so look, there have been a lot of critiques of the season. You sent me a great article by Allison Herman in Variety, which I actually included in this week's LA Food Stack. So go make sure to click and subscribe to that, dear listener. But okay, I'm going to run through them really quickly. But number one, celebrity cameos.
No. Well, yeah, as a reason that the season's flawed, absolutely. Like the over reliance. Fucking, I better never see John Cena again in this show. I mean, look, I'm not mad at the chefs. It's cool. They just like were, again, I feel like overused and fucking flashbacks of Rene Redzepi over and over and over again. Not something I need.
Do it in a When Harry Met Sally kind of way. I'm telling you, like do it in like getting their real takes, you know, and weave that into the show in some way, shape, or form, because that hits for me personally. The second much made critique of the season is that they spent, like, whereas in previous seasons, it was very much developing character across an ensemble, especially in season 2. They did it so well with Richie, for example, that in season 3, they spent too much time trying to develop Carmi's character.
Yes and no. It was too much time with Carmi. Actually, it wasn't too much time with Carmi. It was too much time with the facts more than anything and like random other stuff. I made a list of like, because they did seed moments for basically every character. The Marcus Magic thing, the Sydney decision, Tina's story, and what we were intended to take from that and maybe learn a little bit more about her. So it's not that it wasn't there. It's just that they didn't, they decided not to make it pay off this season. It's all teed up for next. And that makes it feel like I said, empty treading water character development, and it feels pointless. Like it feels like we didn't spend any time with these people who we really like and enjoy, and instead we're just watching Carmi flashbacks at Noma.
Yeah, it feels a bit like a waste, doesn't it? Anyways, the last critique that they mentioned in a lot of the articles is something that we've touched on, and that is delivering on the story versus character, or delivering thematically from an industry commentary perspective. And there are examples of them doing both well at times, but that's definitely a tension that exists.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think, and this ties into to the cameo idea, right? To your point, the industry commentary as it comes from Cicero and Computer is really interesting. Two people who are characters in the world of the bear, not real life chefs who are here to, I don't know, make the points for us via kind of not contrived, but like, anecdotes set up, right? I 100% agree with this. I think the balance might have been better if they had maybe focused a bit more on the characters in the actual world they've built instead of, pulling in Wiley Dufresne and stuff like that, right?
Yeah. Who also was pretty good, I gotta say.
Mm.
Well, look, those are the major critiques. Do you have any other big ones to levy?
No, no other big ones. It's just that, look, there's a good show in here, and I think I actually feel weirdly optimistic that season 4 is going to be really good,
Yeah.
and that they're going to be able to get back to what made season 1 and 2 so great. I'm confident in that. So, no, I'm looking forward to it, despite all of this.
Well, I did just want to add something at the end, which is in one of the articles I read, I think it was the Variety piece, where they were talking about how season 1, very clear narrative engine, right? Like let's turn the beef around. Carmi's coming in, let's turn the beef around. 2, let's open the fucking bear. Like literally we just got to open the fucking bear. And then 3, the bear's open. Now what?
Yep.
And it actually reminded me of something that Santiago Lastra, chef of Cole, said in the last episode of the LA Food Podcast when I interviewed him at Holbox. He was talking about something that him and other chefs talk about, like, or that he's had conversations about, especially at like World's 50 Best level, is that you spend so much time ideating a restaurant, researching, developing the menu, and then opening it. And there's so much excitement around your opening. And then when you open, it's like, now what?
Yeah.
Like you're just a restaurant, and it's not just a restaurant, but what it means is like now you have to do the damn thing.
Yeah.
And the hullabaloo, the sort of like celebration kind of goes away, and you just kind of have to go to work every day and do the job. And that can be really disorienting for a lot of folks. So it kind of reminded me of this season. That is what this season is, right? Like the restaurant is now open. There's been sort of the fanfare, or let's say the excitement around that. And now it's just doing the job. And therefore, you know, the tedium that they did convey pretty well in this, sometimes intentionally, sometimes I think not, reflects reality.
Yeah, no, it does. And I think if it had been, if this had been the final season of The Bear, I think it would have been season 2, we got to get the bear open. Season 3, the bear is open. How do we make it good?
Yeah.
And what's the approach we're going to take? A David Field, Joel McHale approach, or an Olivia Colman approach, right? And I think that would have been a good arc. It's open. How do we make it good? And you would have gotten the story of the tedium from an episode like Doors, which seems like an episode they would have always intended to make, which really nailed that, I think, idea. Instead, it seems they were forced to expand their story. And yeah, it's real. Like we got the tedium, but I think at the expense of a quality TV show.
I mean, honestly, I think maybe they just didn't get tight on that idea until the end when they were shooting like the finale, and they really set up this dichotomy between the Olivia Colman approach and the David Field approach. Because honestly, if this entire season had been Carmy saying, "I'm going to run this place a la David Field, and let's see if that succeeds," that would have been an interesting journey.
Yeah.
You know, because then we could have seen it perhaps failing at the end. And then in season 4, he's like, let's do this the right way. And maybe the bear still closes at the end of it, right? Like it still shuts down because it's really hard to run a fucking restaurant, right? But at least he did it the right way. That actually would have been a great season, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And by the way, from the interaction we see with Cicero, I think it like with Cicero running out of money, the bear is going to close, and it's going to close exactly the way that we anticipated, unjustly due to unforeseen circumstances. And, you know, maybe the happy ending version would have been, oh, but the community comes together and like blah, blah, blah. But the bear, I think, was always going to close, not due to it succeeding in a way that's good and healthy, but because of the shitty financial precarity that restaurants face. I can actually picture in my head, if this had been a 10 episode season, the episode 1, which you hated and got bored of, I feel like those flashbacks would have been like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And episode 2 would have been the rest of episode 1. And you can then Doors is episode 2. Like you can just see it playing out.
Episode 5 is the review. It's shitty.
Yeah.
Episode 6, Sydney leaves because she doesn't like the way things are going. Episode 7 is the true unravel. Like you can see a universe where that show happens and it's a good show.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Okay, well, on that note, just to close things out, what is your hope for season 4?
I guess so. Obviously, I could say all the things about character paying off and us seeing the growth that we kind of really didn't get to see a ton of this season. What I'm actually going to say is my hope for season 4 is that FX allows them to make exactly the story that Chris Storer wants to make. If it's 7 episodes, make it 7 episodes, right? If you only got 7 episodes of story, make it a 7-episode final season. I don't think they're going to be allowed to do this, but like that to me would be the actual hope, is that instead of trying to, and again, I'm really harping on this, I really believe in this idea, again, via reporting from Andy Greenwald, that like they kind of got screwed over for business purposes, and please just let them make the story and the art that they want to make, and let that be what we get. And I think if that's what they're allowed to do, it's going to be fucking great.
Let the bear be the bear. That's what it comes down to, right?
That's what it comes down to, baby.
Do you regret watching this season?
No, of course not. Of course not. I don't know if you can tell, but like literally it feels good to be emotionally engaged, even if it's in a, more negative way than it was before. I care about, as you were saying, I care about the show so much. I still love all the characters. I am invested in what happens to them. I don't regret it at all. Can't wait for season 4, man.
You love the abuse. By the way, you just saying like it feels good to be emotionally involved in something is one of the saddest statements I've ever heard you make, and I've heard some sad ones over the years.
No, I mean like in a culture, yeah, good bit. I meant like in a cultural respect. I mean, man, it's been a rough year. It's been a year of losing, man. Top Chef,
yeah,
shaky, trailer shaky. My entire betting portfolio, pretty shaky. So
well, things are turning around on that front, though.
just barely.
By the way, I'm going to do your shitty Yelp review of the week for you. Do you want to tell the listeners what happened with your laptop?
All right. I mean, yeah. So this is not necessarily shitty Yelp review as a partner, but more of like a individual idiot. Wait, didn't we touch on this last episode? I thought we opened with it.
We did, but the last thing the listeners heard is that your backpack was in the back of a Lyft and that it should be on my doorstep when I got home.
Yeah. That's right. And it's gone. So I lost my laptop and my car keys. I had to lift home from the airport, then lift back to the airport the next day with a backup set of keys, and then drive to work. Not a good time. Not a good time for Sal. The July 4th holiday couldn't come soon enough.
That's good, man. That's not, you know what? That's not even that shitty of a Yelp review. It's just you were listening to your 76ers podcast a little too intently, and the world can't blame you for being a dedicated fan.
Mistake number 1 was being a fan of that team in the first place, but yeah. Hey, that's a story for another time.
Well, you got people in your life who are trying to change that.
Apparently, it's never going to work.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, buddy, thank you for joining. Thank you for being such a dedicated watcher of the Bear with so many insightful thoughts. And I have a feeling we'll be talking about this again, maybe even before the next season comes out.
Ooh, excited for that.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the LA Food Podcast, dear listener. And thanks as always to Father Saul for joining us and binging the Bear so diligently to share his takes with us. We'll be back next week with another epic episode. And if you're looking for me in the meantime, you can find me on TikTok, Instagram, Threads, and YouTube at the LA Countdown. That's TheLACOUNTDOWN. You can also find us at thelacountdown.com. You can also find us on Instagram at LA Food Pod. That's LAFOODPOD. And also don't forget to go sign up for our totally free Substack newsletter. It's called LA Food Stack, and you can also do that at the link in show notes. Also, if you're feeling generous, go leave us a review. You can do it anywhere where you listen to podcasts. It really helps us make our way up the charts on Spotify, Apple, and all the other platforms.